The Great Silence, as it's often referred to, describes the lack of signals from space that appear to originate from an unnatural source. The silence has persisted for around 90 years, that is the time we've been listening for signals from space. In that time, only one signal has any significance. On August 15, 1977, the radio telescope in Ohio State University, Big Ear, was observing the Great Silence as it had been for the last 16 years. That day, a radio signal of 1,420 MHz was coming from the constellation Sagittarius. The signal lasted 72 seconds, but was never detected again. Radio astronomer Jerry R. Emin discovered the signal a few days later, and was so impressed by the results that he printed it out, circled, and wrote WOW next to it, subsequently naming it the WOW signal. The frequency of the signal, 1,420 MHz, is naturally emitted by hydrogen, the most common element in the universe, and physicists at Cornell University speculate that any civilization attempting to communicate via radio signals would do so at that frequency, under the assumption any civilization would be familiar with it. But the WOW signal took place over 40 years ago, and with no evidence of aliens since then, scientists have understandably gotten confused, and some even believe the WOW signal may have been a fluke. While that's not a fun thought, the longer we go without a signal comparable to it, the more it seems like they could be right. On average, 1 in 5 stars in the Milky Way have at least one Earth-like planet in the habitable zone, and in a galaxy with at least 100 billion stars, that's around 20 billion planets comparable to ours. If life were to emerge on 1% of those planets, we still have 200 million planets with life on them. And if only 1% of those planets have civilizations smart enough to send out radio signals, there should be 2 million active civilizations we can meet in the Milky Way alone. Under these assumptions, why haven't we met our new extraterrestrial friends? One theory says there really could be as many alien civilizations as we believe there are across the galaxy, but they're watching us, choosing not to contact yet. We could be too underdeveloped for any aliens to want to let us know that they're here, and they are waiting for us to meet some requirements they've set for civilizations on a similar level to our own before they introduce themselves. Another idea is that aliens want to communicate with us, but just can't. On Earth, radio communication is the most efficient way we have figured out to communicate. But who's to say aliens use the same thing? For all we know, they could be using a different type of communication we haven't thought of or discovered yet, and neither of our signals we've put out have been detected by each other. Our galaxy is 100,000 light years from end to end, and in the center of the galaxy is where stars reside closest together. But the further from the center we go, the more spread out stars become. And since we live 25,000 light years from the galactic center, some scientists believe we may just be out in the sticks. On top of this, our radio signals have only reached 200 light years in any given direction, and within those 200 light years, there's only 200,000 stars. And in comparison, a 3 light year area near the center of the galaxy has around 9 million stars. Because of the math we did earlier, it wouldn't be crazy to think we're the only civilization that exists in this area of the galaxy, and our signals haven't reached aliens that could be looking for us. Stephen Hawking famously believed that giving away our position via radio signals is a bad idea, and that it'd be smarter to hide from aliens until we reach a point where we could defend ourselves if our cosmic neighbors aren't as friendly as we'd hoped they'd be. And while the thought sounds like a science fiction movie, when you think about it, it's not that far-fetched. In the history of our own species, any civilization that set out and explored across an ocean or continent often found itself technologically superior to the civilization they found when they arrived, and at some point chose to wipe them out. Just look at what happened when the Europeans discovered the Americas. As such, a civilization that has the ability to cross the distance between stars is bound to be much more advanced than we are as of now, and if they had ambitions to colonize the Earth and solar system, they wouldn't struggle to get rid of us if we tried to stop them. However, even if we go completely quiet now, our previous signals are still traveling the galaxy, and who's to say an alien species hasn't picked up on them and is already on their way? There's nothing we could do at that point, but if nobody's heard our calls yet, it's important to come off as non-threatening as possible. On our own planet, the different civilizations that interacted with each other consistently had different ways of communication, verbal or nonverbal. And since neither one spoke each other's language, nonverbal communication was the best they could work with. Humans' nonverbal communication came about in our early development to help us survive in the environment presented to us, but if different civilizations on the same planet struggle to communicate with each other in the most basic way, we can only imagine how hard it'd be to communicate with aliens that evolved in a completely different environment. Even things accepted all over the world like a smile could be perceived as a threat to a species that knows nothing about us. If the danger and yet importance of first contact is so obvious, why don't we have a plan for when it actually happens? Many countries with space agencies spend millions on telescopes, and even if first contact anytime soon is unlikely, it's crazy to think the same countries spending so much money are oblivious to the idea we could actually find something. But with all possibilities considered, our drive to find others like ourselves outweigh the fear that follows it, and our curiosity of the unknown will force us to keep looking until our question is answered. But even if it does turn out we're truly all alone in a universe this incredible, it's an awful waste of space.